From RBA Studios in Kigali, Rwanda, this is RTV News. Now, before we begin, breaking news. Well, Louise Mushikiwabo, the Secretary General of the International Organization of La Francophonie, has been re-elected. And also coming up, Rwanda's Prime Minister has called on entrepreneurs to use the electronic billing machine, reiterating that it helps to increase Rwanda's tax revenue. This is RTV News. I am Isabel Masozera. It's great to have your company. Now, as we begin breaking delightful news, let us inform you that Louise Mushikiwabo, the Secretary General of the International Organization of La Francophonie, has been re-elected for another term. She was first elected on the 12th of October 2018 for a 4-year term of office. Louise Mushikiwabo is the fourth and remains the current Secretary General of the International Organization of La Francophonie. Moving on, the Secretary General of the International Organization of La Francophonie, Louise Mushikiwabo, noted that over the past 4 years, the organization has been involved in cooperation activities with the aim of changing people's lives. She made the remarks while at this year's La Francophonie gathering taking place in Tunisia. Olive Wuntete kicks us off.
The President of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency Paul Kagame, is among the head of states that participated in the conference of Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie. They were presented with the report of the outcomes of the meeting that brought together ministers held on Friday, which examined the promotion of the principle of gender equality, the advancement of technology, and the issue of youth unemployment in the member countries. In his remarks, the President of Tunisia, Kais Saied, reiterated on various challenges currently hindering the world and noted that now is the moment to dream big.
Mesdames et messieurs, nous sommes tous conscients.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware of the current challenges the world is facing. It is up to us to dream for a better world, for the humanity, for a universal development based on justice and freedom. If we succeed here, in Djeba, in Tunisia, and tomorrow all over the world, to understand our problems in a more humanistic way, everyone will emerge victoriously.
Louise Mushikiwabo, the Secretary General of the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, who has been leading this organization for the past 4 years, stated that a lot has been done to develop this organization.
It
is now time for the first result of the transformation in which I have engaged you and our organization. The OEF, thanks to the closer action around flagship projects, without mentioning many others, its added value has become more relevant. It is increasingly present and united on the ground through relevant actions that can change the daily lives of our populations. In coordination with its partners, it contributes to the management of global challenges, and here too, it modernizes its management and governance processes to gain agility and efficiency. Louise Mushikiwabo also told those who participated in this conference that it is time for every member of the OEF to feel proud.
Nous allons vers une francophonie décomplexée.
We are moving towards an uninhibited francophonie. I consider myself an uninhibited French-speaking person, a French language fully accepted by everyone, alongside other languages. Indeed, except France, all of our other members have one or more languages. It is this francophonie that we want to establish in the future and make it more relevant. In a fractured world, the francophonie must remain united in a privileged forum for listening and exchanging dialogue, constantly on the alert to prevent tensions from degenerating into conflict. This conference is happening for the 18th time and has a theme that recurs on technology as a channel for development and cooperation in this organization. It comes after being postponed for 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Olive Nete, RTV News.
Thank you, Olive. Now, Rwanda's Prime Minister has called on entrepreneurs to use the electronic billing machine, reiterating that it helps the country's revenue to increase and ultimately accelerates the country's development. Prince Manzi has more.
Today, Saturday evening, Rwanda celebrated the National Day of Taxpayers, celebrations that saw end of the Taxpayers Month across the country. This is the 20th celebration of the Taxpayers' Day that coincided with the Silver Jubilee of the Rwanda Revenue Authority. The Prime Minister, Dr. Edward Ngirente, appreciates that ever since the establishment of this authority, the amount of tax received by the government continued to increase gradually, as well as the country's economy.
Ibi byashobotse ahanini kubera uruhare n'ubufatanye rw'abikorera.
This was possible because of the partnership with the private sector that has resulted into different positive changes, including the increase of the country's GDP from 406 billion in 2000 to 10,944 billion Rwandan francs in 2021. This is really a good number, and every citizen is proud of working in Rwanda as well as being a Rwandan.
No kuba umunyarwanda nabyo bikaba ari byiza nk'uko twese tubizi.
The Rwanda Revenue Authority states that in the past 25 years since its establishment, the funds collected increased from 60 billion in the 1998-1999 financial year to 1,910.2 billion in 2021-2022. The number of the taxpayers increased from 633 in 1998 to 383,103 currently. The introduction of technology in acquiring taxes contributed highly to this and benefits both parties in taxing, as explained by Donata Mukanyarwaya, a businesswoman.
Mu gukoresha IBM bituma menya ibintu naranguye, bituma menya ibintu nacuruje, bigatuma menya n'ibintu bisigaye mu bubiko stock yanjye.
Using the EBM helps to record everything that I have retailed and sold, as well as the remaining in the stock. And this makes it easy when I go back to retail. Another thing is when you leave these young people in your shop, they don't steal your funds because you're able to control.
Ndagenda nkareba ku ikoranabuhanga, nkareba ibintu nararanye nimugoroba, nkareba n'ibintu yacuruje, nkamenya ko yanyibye.
This is from where the Prime Minister urged everyone to use the electronic billing machine. I want us to move from here after we agree to erase the saying of "do you want EBM or not?" Promise me that such saying is erased by now in Rwanda. EBM must be a routine. They buy, you give them the bill without asking. And in case the buyer refuses it, ask him or her why. Rwanda Revenue Authority appreciates that it has achieved its objective in 2021-2022 financial year, as it has moved in 1,910.2 billion compared to the 1,831.3 billion that was set. This means a 4.3% increase. The tax on local government authorities goal was achieved on a 109.3% rate, as 178.3 billion was moved in, while the goal was 163.1 billion. Prince Manzi, RTV News.
In more news, local residents residing near the Rwanda-DRC border say that there was some apprehension when gunfire erupted during the night, but that they have now been reassured by authorities and returned to their usual activities after learning what really transpired. Seljin Hori refiled this report.
The gunfire erupted around 1 a.m. on Saturday after a lone, unknown soldier believed to belong to the armed forces of the DRC, FARDC, crossed the border and opened fire on Rwandan soldiers, resulting in his death.
There were 2 rounds of bursts, bullets being fired, and lots of them. Of course, it's not like we are counting the number of bullets being fired, but the second burst was really unsettling, because we thought it was over when it started again. In the morning, we found that there were many soldiers in our neighborhood and learned that it had been a soldier that had crossed the border into Rwanda and had been killed. That is what happened.
aje mu Rwanda nyine baramwica ni gutyo.
When things quieted down, I concluded that it was over and went back to sleep. That is all you can do. In the morning, the Rwanda Defense Force released a statement on the incident, confirming that indeed it had been a soldier from the DRC side of the border, believed to belong to FARDC, who had walked into Rwandan territory and opened fire on Rwandan soldiers, who then returned fire and killed him. The representatives of the regional expanded joint verification mechanism were then called upon to survey the scene where the shooting occurred and the body of the deceased soldier before leaving and heading back to the DRC. Local officials were also asked to comment on what comes next. What comes next will be determined and followed up on by the concerned authorities, and we will be informed of what was discussed as well, seeing that we were not present when those discussions occurred. The body will go to the morgue until what they have discussed will be implemented. Cross-border trade and other activities in the area have been unaffected by the incident, which unfortunately is not the first. On the 23rd of May this year, FARDC rocket shelling hit Chinigi and Nyanje sectors in Musanze district, which also borders Gahunga sector in Burera district, injuring several civilians and damaging property. At the time, the Rwanda Defense Force requested that the expanded joint verification mechanism investigate cross-border shelling on Rwandan territory by the DRC's armed forces, FARDC. On the 28th of May, again this year, 2 Rwanda Defense Force soldiers were kidnapped while on patrol along the border. On the 10th of June, the DRC's armed forces, FARDC, fired 2 122mm rockets into Rwanda from the Bunagana area, striking along the Rwanda-DRC border in Nyabigoma Cell, Kinigi sector, Musanze district, close to midday. There were no casualties. On the 17th of June this year, around 8:45 a.m., an unidentified Congolese soldier armed with an AK-47 rifle crossed the Petite Barriere border in Rubavu district and began shooting at Rwandan security personnel and civilians crossing the border, injuring 2 Rwandan police officers. A Rwanda National Police officer on duty shot back in self-defense to protect border agents and civilians crossing the border. On the 7th of this month of November, a DRC fighter jet violated Rwandan airspace and briefly landed at the Rubavu airstrip before taking off. No action was taken by Rwanda at that time. Indeed, despite all of these openly hostile actions from the DRC, not once has Rwanda responded in kind.
Still on regional matters, analysts assert that it is difficult for the eastern part of the DRC to see long-lasting peace, as long as Kinyarwanda-speaking communities there do not have security and are persecuted by both the armed forces of the DRC and terrorist groups like FDLR. Take a look.
It has now been 5 months since the M23 rebel group went on the offensive against FARDC, the DRC's armed forces, taking territory in the eastern part of the country. But there are more than 120 armed groups in the eastern DRC, though now the focus has turned on this one particular group.
What is happening on the battlegrounds between groups and the government, and the intervention by the EAC and the mediator, the designated mediators. There is the EAC mediator, His Excellency Uhuru, and the regional talks mediator, His Excellency the President of Angola. And just to remind you that the Angola talks were going on even before M23 became what it is today. Meaning there was a problem, and it dates back to the times of, as far as Rwanda is concerned, dates back to the times of post-genocide, 1994, the armed groups that went into Congo and reorganized. So there's been a lot of back and forth talks and sort of tug of war, which is acquiring a political characteristic for no particular reason, because it is not allowed in any country under international law to have refugees who are almost like allowed to carry weapons. No, they stay in camps, they get taken care of, but they are not allowed to reorganize, to mobilize, and become a formidable armed group. The FDLR has been the case in point, and Rwanda has been putting this forward, not only to Congo, but to the community of nations, reflecting on the adverse effects it has on the allowing such a group to persist there has a potential threat on Rwanda, an adverse effect on the peace and security of Rwanda, which is quite understandable at a diplomatic level. Now, there have been attempts to solve the problem bilaterally and multilaterally. It continues. But today, there is another level which is associated with Rwanda but without tangible evidence. The level of engagement between M23 and the government of Congo. There is an assumption that if M23 looks strong on the battlefield, then it's not Congolese, it's Rwanda. It's a bit strange to imagine that a soldier who behaves well on the battlefield and seems to be well trained and fights very well is attributed to another country. If that is to do with Rwanda, then I would joke about it. Congo needs to hire trainers from Rwanda for its army, if it's about training. But I think it's not about training and battle tactics. It's about governance. It's about the ability of a government to solve problems. It's about what Kinshasa is doing internally to solve problems that cause these armed groups to keep arising.
Mediation efforts facilitated by the former President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, have continued, but the important issues yet to be addressed in the eastern DRC mean the road is still long.
It is in twofold. On one side, I'm seeing a trend from the mediator, which does not suggest any successful ending to the peace process in Nairobi. But it is not out of the ordinary, it's normal, because this is a process. There is room for improvement, especially where there may be errors in the course of making pronouncements. I don't see, as a person, I don't see the pronouncements of a mediator as having an effect on creating a peaceful ending. It may actually complicate the process. Why am I saying so? He's suggesting that this armed group in Eastern Congo should withdraw and return to where it was before April. I think it's April this year. One would imagine that it means staying somewhere and waiting for the talks in Nairobi to be concluded. I don't see that practically being the case. On the contrary, he's suggesting that they get back to their refugee status out of the borders of Congo and wait for Nairobi to solve the problem. It has never happened anywhere. I'm not expecting that to happen in this particular scenario. It has never happened. What normally happens is when it has started with an armed struggle, it is the warring parties that get to a round table and accept to give, to cede something in exchange for what they're asking for. Kinshasa vis-a-vis M23 and vis-a-vis other groups, by the way. There are many groups. It only happens that this M23 is appearing to be strong on the battleground, but it doesn't mean it's the only group. So there is a list of demands that needs to be reconciled and coming up with a common ground. The mediator is expected to stay back and to keep advising. Giving instructions is something that is not normal, except those who come in ready to fight whoever that is not complying with their directives. and I'm not seeing His Excellency Uhuru going that direction.
The problems in the eastern DRC have now persisted for the last 28 years, starting at the time genocidal forces responsible for the fastest genocide in recorded human history, the genocide against the Tutsi, fled there after being defeated here in Rwanda.
And that's my time with you. Thank you so much for choosing RTV News. Always a pleasure bringing you the latest here in Rwanda and beyond. I'm Isabel Masozera. Do stay with RTV.